Echo, echo, echo. Tomorrow is the appearance day of Lord Varaha. And I was looking at the calendar for Chicago because I don't have a calendar for Detroit. And today is the appearance day of Lord Varaha. But here in Detroit, today's Ekadasi. In Detroit, in Chicago, yesterday was Ekadasi. Figure it out. So this evening, thinking it was going to be the appearance day of Lord Varaha, we're going to speak about Lord Varaha. And how are we supposed to break the fast for Vishnu Tattva forms appearing when we're supposed to break the Ekadasi, but fasting for Dwadasi?
Calendar says fasting for Dwadashi is today till
Okay. Okay.
till noon today. So
Okay, fine. I fast on Ekadasi half day anyway, so taken care of. Now there's lots of mystery that I learned today. I've spent many hours today absorbed in meditation in researching about Lord Varaha, and on the car ride I found out something more. Some of you may be from Andhra. Who's here from Andhra? Few of you. So you know something that I just found out about today. And that what I found out about today on the car ride, because the family I was with are from Andhra. I probably knew this from past visits, but I had forgotten that the hill, the Tirumala hill, was, before Balaji was there, was where Lord Varaha resided after killing Hiranyaksha, according to the folks at Tirumala. And when Venkateshwar wanted to have his residence there, then Varahadeva, in his deity form, gave permission. He could have his deity there. And therefore it is custom, before taking darshan of the deity of Venkateshwar, to take darshan first of Lord Varaha. And we just read this, just driving in the driveway, that the bhoga offerings are first offered to Varaha, then offered to Balaji. So I didn't know all that. I mean, I had forgotten all those things. So very special manifestation. How he came to be there, according to this temple, is after killing Hiranyaksha, he resided there to rest. Like, Lord Nrsingadev rested in, it depends on where you are in India, where he went to rest. Many places. If it's Mayapur, he went to Nrsinghapalli. And if you're somewhere else, it's someplace else. Which is quite okay, because the Lord can expand himself and be present in a number of places at the same time. Now, some of you who are a little familiar with Srimad Bhagavatam and the Lord Varaha story, you probably know already that in one purport, Prabhupada quotes Jiva Goswami saying that when Maitreya was narrating the story of Lord Varaha, because the question from Vidura to Maitreya was about Lord Varaha, he combined two different narrations into one. Some of you may be familiar with that. It's right in the BBT purports. So I had a very nice time today exploring what Rupa Goswami says about that. So I'm going to share that with you along with narrating the pastime. So to begin with, we're going to start with the Phala Stuti, the verses from the Bhagavatam that describe the benefit the phala, the fruit that one receives from hearing this. So listen very carefully to the fruits, because it'll encourage you to pay attention to the story. Here's Canto 3, Chapter 16. If, with an attitude of devotional service, one hears and describes this auspicious narration of Lord Boar's pastimes, which are worthy of description, the Lord, who is within the heart of everyone, is very pleased. Nothing remains unachieved when the Supreme Personality of Godhead is pleased with someone. By transcendental achievement, one understands everything else to be insignificant. One who engages in transcendental loving service is elevated to the highest perfectional stage by the Lord Himself, who is seated in everyone's heart. So you just have to turn the channel to an attitude of devotional service, and you'll get lots of nice phala. Now, Rupa Goswami says some very important and interesting and not commonly discussed details about Lord Varaha in his Laghu Bhagavatamrita. Laghu Bhagavatamrita is now translated and published by the BBT, along with commentary by Rupa Goswami, that details the avatars. It's a book just about avatars and many different features of those avatars. And here's a section where that, which is only mentioned in one of Prabhupada's purports, is described in substantial detail. The two different forms of Lord Varaha, but there's actually more than two. So, the boar avatar advented twice. First, during Swayambhuva Manvantar, from the nostril of Brahma, in order to lift up the earth. And a second time, during Chakshusha Manvantar, appearing from the water, not from the nostril of Brahma, and killed Hiranyakashipu. So this is text number 10. We're going to fast forward a bit. We're going to go now to 16. This is going to discuss Swayambhuva Manu, the form of Varaha during his reign. At the beginning of Brahma's day, during Swayambhuva Manu's reign, that's Swayambhuva Manu's two sons, did not yet have offspring. The two sons are Priyavrata and Uttanapada. Okay? Priyavrata didn't become married until many generations later. And Uttanapada had not yet had sons. So, thus, at that time, there were no prachetas, nor Daksha, nor Diti. Swayambhuva Manu had a son named Uttanapada. In his line, the prachetas appeared. Their son was Daksha. He had a daughter named Diti. Diti was married to Kashyapa and bore Hiranyaksha. Thus, since Hiranyaksha was born long after the Swayambhuva Manvantar. The firstborn avatar who appeared during Swayambhuva Manu's time could not have been killed by him. Therefore, it should be understood that when the firstborn avatar appeared, he simply lifted the earth from the ocean. No battle with Hiranyaksha because there was no Hiranyaksha, because Hiranyaksha came much later. Clear? It took me a few times to go through this. But because you see I skipped some verses. In those verses it gives that, the history. So Uttanapada, and Uttanapada's son was Dhruva, right? And then Dhruva became king and so forth and so on and so on. And Uttanapada's line, the Prachetas, sons of King Prachinibari, in Uttanapada's line. And the Prachetas had as their son Daksha. Daksha had as you're going to see the image shortly, some number of daughters, 60 daughters. And 13 of those 60 daughters were given to Kashyapa. One of them was Diti, and Diti's sons were Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. Much, much later, during the reign of Swayambhuva Manu, but the boar incarnation appeared towards the beginning of Swayambhuva Manu's reign. So it was a different Varaha. Now going two verses later, it is mentioned in the Matsya Purana that there was a pralaya during Swayambhuva Manu's reign. Because of a curse of Agastya Rishi upon Swayambhuva Manu. Now, there's some discussion in the verses in between that it is said that after each Manu, at the change of Manus, there's a partial devastation. You with me? Anybody lost yet? At the end of every Manu, there's a partial devastation. All the way from the lower planets, the 7 lower, then Bhuvar, Swarga, Loka. Then Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Brahmaloka, they're not submerged. But the heavenly planets down are submerged. So that the demigods plus Manu have to skedaddle. They can't stay in the heavenly realm anymore because the heavenly realm is submerged in water. And some prayers are offered to Brahma, help. And so, in course of time, the water subsides. And then there's a change of Manus. Someone becomes the next Manu. And then the Manu selects a whole new set of demigods. Each change of Manu. So the question that Rupa Goswami brings up, some people say, wait a minute. How was there a devastation during the reign of Swayambhuva Manu? Because the devastations happen after the change of Manus. And the answer is, according to Matsya Purana, there's a pralaya, partial pralaya, during his reign of Swayambhuva Manu because of a curse of Agastya Rishi. And when there was this submersion of the earth, that's when Varaha appeared from the nostril of Brahma and rescued the earth. And there was no Hiranyaksha battle because he hadn't been born yet. Clear? So you're now going to see some artwork, because I like artwork. And this is a B.G. Sharma painting, very, very colorful, very beautiful. And there's an ISKCON painting with the demigods up in the sky because they wanted Varaha to help rescue the earth. There's another BBT painting. And according to Rupa Goswami, the color of this Varaha is black, like a dark cloud, like a rain cloud. According to Prabhupada, it's Rakta Varaha. Rakta, red. So, red. That's what the artist did. He's red. And, so there's some other artists that, they make him any color they want to make him. Here he's like a, turquoise blue, and here he's green. And there he's half white and half black, and he's got the planet on his tusks. Here's, in Tibet, they have a murti, a carved murti of Lord Varaha. And here's a carving on the side of a wall. That looks like outside carving. And in a painting in South India of Lord Varaha. There's no Hiranyaksha, just Lord Varaha. Now we're going to go further because there's a second Varaha that's during the Chakshusha Manu. Rupa Goswami writes, it is mentioned in the Vishnu Damotara, that's a Purana, that by the will of the Lord there was a sudden deluge during the reign of Chakshusha Manu. During the reign of Chakshusha Manu, Varaha appeared at that time to lift the earth up, which had become submerged, and also killed Hiranyaksha. So that's the second. This is the Sweta Varaha. And, where did he come from? Well, he just appeared. Well, later on, in just a few more verses, later a section of the same chapter, Rupa Goswami identifies where the abode of Varahadeva is. And get ready for some surprise, because according to Scripture, there's a four-legged Varaha, and there's a half-man, half-Varaha, boar incarnation, like Lord Nrsingadev, Nara Hari, and there's Nara or Nri Varaha. So we have multiple Varahas, not just two. Rakta, or blackish Varaha, Sweta Varaha, and two-legged Nri Varaha. So here we go. Rupa Goswami quotes again Vishnu Damotara Purana, where the abode of this form, and there's other forms, much and others mentioned, that are within the material universe. What does that mean? It means there's a personality of Godhead who presides over other planets. When we read, we find this in Brihat Bhagavatamrita. There are forms of the Lord who make their appearance here and there and are worshipped by the devotees in that place. So here's what it says in Vishnu Damotara Purana. Nri Varaha is said to reside in Maharloka. Where's Maharloka? Maharloka is just above Swargaloka. So, Bhuvar Swarga Loka, then there's four more to make seven. Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Brahmaloka. The Maharloka doesn't get submerged during a partial devastation. And that's the abode of Nri Varaha, a half man, half Varaha form of the Lord. Then elsewhere in in Vishnu Damotara Purana, there's another form of the Lord, the four-legged Varaha, where it's described that the beautiful and self-effulgent realm of Varaha Loka touches the material universe as it stands beneath everything that's below the seventh Patala Loka and the planet known as Kalagni Rudra. I don't know where Kalagni Rudra is, but we do know from the Bhagavatam that the Rudras, shortly after the appearance of Lord Brahma, came the four Kumaras, and they declined to assist in filling up the universe with praja. So Brahma became angry, and from the brow of Brahma came Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva started attacking Brahma, and he said, "Not now, your time will come." And he sent them to Mahakalapur. Mahakalapur has the Vedic scriptures have several places that are known by that name. Mahakala, the great time, so the time of universal devastation. So the Rudras are there at the bottom of the universe. That's one of the things that's below the seven lower planetary systems, is the Rudras. And apparently one of them is Kalagni Rudra. Makes sense, right? Where the fire, the Agni of devastation, because when it's time, Shesha, fire comes from his mouth, the Rudras dance and the fire expands and everything gets engulfed in fire. Maha, Agni, Rudra. It's in the lower region, below Patala. There's some other things below Patala, but I won't go into it because it's like maybe information overload. Well, I'll say it. Do you know where the Pitriloka is? That's where it is. Pitriloka is below the seven lower planetary systems. Pitriloka. Pitriloka. And it's one of the residences of Yamaraj. But also the hellish planets are down below. There's it's narrow as far as the dimensions of the universe. It's very narrow, but there's a lot going on down there, including the abode of Lord Varaha, called Varahaloka. So where does Varaha, from what place does Varaha appear when it's the Chakshushamanu time for the Lord's arrangement for Varaha to appear and rescue the earth and kill Hiranyaksha? Well, it's could be, doesn't say specifically, Rupa Goswami doesn't say, but he came from, he can come from anywhere because he's everywhere. Vishnu is everywhere. So where does he reside? He resides everywhere. But he has an abode, and this is one of those abodes, Varahaloka, in this special region within the universe, what makes it very convenient because if he's submerged in the Garbhodak oceans, he's right around the corner. So what we're accustomed to hearing, what I'm accustomed to hearing, is that Varaha appears to rescue the earth and battles with Hiranyaksha. I'm accustomed to hearing that. So let's go there, because Hiranyaksha appears as one of the sons of Diti. He's amongst the Daityas. The Daityas are sons of Diti. So we find in Canto 6 is where Daksha, I call him Daksha Part 2. Daksha Part 1 got in this disagreement with Lord Shiva. That's Canto 4. And he got his head chopped. And with Brahma's intervention, he was then given another head, a goat's head. And through the goat's head, he came and apologized profusely to Lord Shiva. But in Canto 6, 2 cantos later, and it's some manus later, he appears again. Daksha appears again as a son of the Prachetas. Daksha appears as a son of Prachetas. And Daksha has, 10,000 sons and 1,000 sons, and Narada explores what their capacity is and decides they're fit to become brahmacharis, so they become brahmacharis. Narada goes to give the good news to Daksha. Daksha insults him, and after that, he then, instead of having so many sons, he has 60 daughters. So that's what the text is here. This is from Canto 6. Daksha begets 60 daughters, and the daughters are given in marriage to different rishis. And one of those rishis was Kashyapa. Kashyapa Muni was given 13 of Daksha's 60 daughters, and one of them was Diti, of course, another one was Aditi. And then there's the others, as you see in the painting, some of them Kayadu and so forth and so on. They had different, not Kayadu. Huh? Kadru, yes, thank you. Kadru. Had different offspring, filling up the universe. That was the plan. So the girls, the daughters of Daksha, were capable, and the Prajapati husbands were capable, and the various living entities of different species became manifest. That's 6th canto. Then here's a detail from Rupa Goswami's Laghu Bhagavatamrita, where he says this Daksha Part 2 occurred during the Chakshusha Manvantar, which was the same time as the appearance of Sweta Varaha, who killed Hiranyaksha. And we'll get to the story very shortly. But I was fascinated with all of this explanation. So Sweta Varaha, that's the second. We'll just go backwards. There's the red Varaha, Rakta Varaha, or Rupa Goswami says black or red Varaha. And then there's Sweta Varaha. Sweta Varaha is the one that kills Hiranyaksha. Hiranyaksha appears as the son of Diti during the Chakshusha Manu. So the Sweta Varaha appears during Chakshusha Manu. He rescues the earth, and he places the earth on the surface of the water, and then there's a battle with Hiranyaksha. And we'll hear the battle. The battle's a nice battle. So this takes place, the narration of these two Varahas takes place in Canto 3. And in Canto 3, it's, as you see in the painting here, it's Maitreya on the left, our left, and Vidura on our right. Vidura is on pilgrimage. He left the Hastinapur, being insulted by Duryodhana, and he went to holy places. And one of the holy places he went to was Prabhas. And when he went to Prabhas, he saw that the whole Yadu dynasty had been annihilated. He left there and he came across Uddhava, early parts of Canto 3. He hears about Krishna from Uddhava. Uddhava sends him, go ask your further questions of Maitreya. He finds Maitreya. And then there's like 2.5 cantos of talks between Maitreya and Vidura. And one of the questions put forward in chapter 15 of Canto 3 by Vidura is, please describe Lord Varaha. And so chapter 16, Lord Varaha is described. And where it begins, where his narration begins, is the inappropriate request of Diti to have union with her husband, in part driven by jealousy, that Aditi, one of the 13 queens, and her sister, elder sister, Aditi, had so many nice children, and she had none. So I'm going to halt the showing of images, and I'm going to go to Canto 3. This is just kind of like a little summary narration, but there's some details that's really nice to capture. So here we go. This is a summary from Canto 3, Srimad Bhagavatam. Kashyapa, the son of Marichi, was offering oblations to Lord Vishnu in the sacrificial fire. That's what you see here. At this time, his wife Diti, this is at sunset, Diti approached him due to being greatly afflicted by sex desire. Without trying to attract him, gradually, by her bodily expressions, the beautiful Diti frankly begged her husband, "Oh, learned one, Cupid is forcibly distressing me with his arrows, just as an elephant troubles a banana tree. I want to have sons like my co-wives, and so you should be merciful to me. My father, Daksha, had separately asked each of his daughters whom we preferred to marry. So she chose Kashyapa. Then, after understanding our intentions, he handed over 13 of his daughters to you, and we have been faithful to you ever since that time. Oh, lotus-eyed one, when someone in distress approaches a great person, his or her pleas should never go in vain." She's like not beating around the bush. She's getting right to the point. The henpecked Kashyapa could have strongly refused his wife, but still he was also sexually inclined. He tried to pacify Diti, who had become very poor-hearted and talkative due to the contamination of lust. Kashyapa said, "O afflicted one, I shall soon gratify your desire. It is only due to having a good wife that a man like me can cross over the great ocean of material existence. Indeed, a wife is so helpful that she is called the better half of a man's body. Just as a military commander can easily conquer invaders while remaining protected within a fort, so a man can conquer his senses by taking shelter of a good wife. For this reason, a man should never repay his wife, could never repay his wife, for all the benefit that he derives from her, even if he were to try to do so during his entire lifetime or even after death. My dear Diti, although I cannot sufficiently repay you, I will satisfy your sex desire for the purpose of begetting children. I only request you wait for a few minutes so that I may not become subject to criticism. The present moment is most inauspicious because at this time Lord Shiva rides upon his bull carrier, accompanied by his ghostly companions. He gives such ghosts the chance of getting a gross material body by placing them in the wombs of women that indulge in sexual intercourse during this forbidden period. Lord Shiva is your sister's husband, and with his 3 eyes he will see your forbidden act. In spite of receiving such good instructions from her husband, Diti was so oppressed by sex desire that she caught hold of Kashyapa's clothes, just like a shameless prostitute, and thus she practically forced him to gratify her lusty urge. After offering obeisances unto worshipful fate, Kashyapa lay down with Diti in a secluded place. After finishing the forbidden act, Kashyapa purified himself by bathing and once again sat down to chant the Gayatri Mantra while meditating on the impersonal aspect of the Absolute. Now I'm confused because he was worshipping Vishnu and now he's doing something else. But that's what it reads. Meanwhile, after having gratified her lust, Diti came to her senses. With her head lowered in shame, she approached her husband and said, "My dear Brahmana, please ensure that my embryo is not killed by Lord Shiva because of this great offense that I've committed against him." Diti then prayed for Lord Shiva's mercy in a very clever manner. Quote, "Let me offer my obeisances unto the angry Lord Shiva. He is so great that he can immediately destroy my embryo, but at the same time he is so merciful and forgiving. Lord Shiva is known as the Lord of all women who are excused even by uncivilized hunters, and therefore I beg him to spare me from his wrath." As Diti stood before him, trembling due to fear of his anger, Kashyapa said, "Because of your polluted mind, the improper time, your disobedience, and your neglect of the demigods, your conception will produce 2 abominable sons who will create havoc within the world by killing innocent persons, torturing women, and enraging the great souls. As a result, the Supreme Lord will incarnate to kill them, just as Indra smashes mountains with his thunderbolt." Diti replied, "Oh, my husband, it is a great relief for me to know that my sons will be killed by the all-merciful Supreme Lord, rather than the wrath of the Brahmanas. One who offends the Brahmanas or causes fear to others is so condemned that even those who are already in hell or who are degraded of the degraded species in which he will later on appear feel no compassion toward him." Kashyapa then informed Diti, "Due to your repentance and firm faith in the Supreme Lord, as well as your adoration for Lord Shiva and myself, one of your grandsons, Prahlad, will be a greatly exalted devotee whose fame will rival that of the Lord himself. Because of his great devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, others will follow in his footsteps, and because of his having satisfied the Supreme Lord, everyone will become pleased with him. As a first-class devotee, your grandson will be able to see the Supreme Lord within and without. He will be a reservoir of all good qualities, and he will feel very pained to see the suffering of the conditioned souls in this material world. After hearing about the glories of Prahlad, Diti became very pleased, but because she could understand that her sons would cause great disturbances to the demigods, she continued to bear the powerful embryos for 100 years without giving birth. Poor Diti. Still, the force of Diti's pregnancy disturbed the entire universe, and the light of the sun and moon became impaired. After observing this fearful condition, the demigods approached Lord Brahma and submitted. "Oh, Lord, just see this darkness that is expanding in all directions. Oh, sustainer of the universe, who knows the intentions of all living entities, Diti's pregnancy has caused this great disturbance, and thus our work has become suspended. Please be merciful unto us, for we have fallen into a very miserable condition." In response, now here's another image. Lord Brahma informed the demigods of what had happened long ago. After traveling all over the material creation, the four sages, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanandana, and Sanat Kumar, entered the spiritual sky wherein the Vaikuntha planets are situated. They were able to do this due to being freed from all material contamination. In the abode of Lord Narayana, the residents have forms similar to that of the Lord, and everyone is engaged in his unalloyed devotional service. There are many forests full of desire trees, and throughout all seasons they are filled with fruits and flowers. Here's a little short, because the Bhagavatam is this whole detailed explanation of description of the kingdom of God. So here's just a short one, and they'll move on. While flying in their airplanes, along with their consorts, the inhabitants of Vaikuntha eternally sing of the character and pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Although the consorts that crowd the airplanes have large hips and beautiful, smiling faces, they cannot stimulate the passion of the residents of Vaikuntha. This means that in Vaikuntha there is the enjoyment of the association of the opposite sex, but there is no sexual relationship because everyone is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. When the king of bees hums in a high pitch, singing the glories of the Lord, the cuckoos, cranes, chakravaka, swans, parrots, and peacocks temporarily stop their singing to listen. Although flowers, such as the champaka, bakula, parijata, and lotus, are transcendently fragrant, they are still conscious of Tulsi's austerities and how the Lord prefers to garland himself with her leaves. The ladies of Vaikuntha are as beautiful as the goddess of fortune, and yet they are sometimes seen cleaning the marble walls just to receive the grace of the Supreme Lord, even though there's practically no dust. So then comes, the 6 gates and then the 7th gate, and they're checked, etc., etc. They cursed the gatekeepers. Here's the translation. Who are these persons who are engaging in the Lord's service and yet have developed a discordant mentality? They must be impostors. And so they suspect others to be just like themselves. In Vaikuntha, there is perfect harmony between the Supreme Lord and the other inhabitants. These two persons are dressed like residents of Vaikuntha, but where has this seed of disharmony come from? Because of seeing duality, they have become contaminated. Therefore, they should be put into the material world, where everyone is conceived of as being either a friend or an enemy. So then the exchange that you're right, we have offended. They are given their choice. The Lord comes. It's not pictured in this painting. And after seeing the Lord's beautiful body, the Kumars advanced to the stage of constant meditation upon his personal feature. Their anger having subsided, the four sages prayed. So their prayers being forgiven for their mistake, and he asks forgiveness for his servant's mistake. He takes the responsibility. By dint of the Lord's presence, the Kumars realized that it had been improper for them to curse the doorkeepers, in spite of the offense that had been committed, and so forth. The long section here. The Lord replied, "O Brahmanas, I have already ordained the punishment that you inflicted upon Jai and Vijay, and thus they will have to accept birth in a demoniac family. But by concentration of their minds upon me in anger, they will always remain connected with me, and soon thereafter they will return to my abode." It is to be understood that the Lord himself engineered the cursing of Jai and Vijay. Ordinarily, there is no possibility that the Kumaras could become so angry, and that the Lord could neglect his gatekeepers, or that anyone could return to the material world after reaching Vaikuntha. Sometimes the Lord desires to fight, and because there are no enemies in Vaikuntha, he incarnates into the material world for this purpose. Some more sharing, just a little break in the story here. I've had a very interesting exchange with Shivara Maharaj about the existence in the spiritual world and of non-material, fully spiritual demigods. And they're different than the demigods. They're similar to but different from the demigods that are spoken of in Sri Brahma Samhita. I don't know if any of you have read carefully Sri Brahma Samhita. I have, and given seminars on it, and it's in the early part, in verse 5, there's a description of Goloka and what's there, including Dikpals, because in the material creation there's protectors of the universe, but in Goloka there's also Dikpals, and the persons that occupy in the material realm the position of protectors of the universe are demigods, and in the spiritual realm they're prototype demigods. That's Bhaktisiddhanta's language. Prototype. I mean, I don't know too much about this, but my understanding is that the word prototype is used when you want to make a patent. You produce a prototype and you patent this, and then from the prototype you make copies of this that's now patented. So the spiritual world, there's prototype demigods. You know, as above, so below, right? And listen to this one. There's prototype demons. They're not the material ones. There's no demons in Goloka, but they're spiritual ones. Because material demons means they're opposed to the supremacy of God. Suras and asuras. Everyone that's heard Prabhupada speaking or his writing, that's the distinction. Very simple. Do you accept that the Krishna is the personality of Godhead? No, demon. We accept God as supreme? No, demon. And then different categories. It's broad. There's degrees, of course, of being demon, but it's a broad category. So, but the demons, according to this is now Sanatana Goswami and Rupa Goswami say the same thing in different verses, same thing. What exists in the spiritual world is everything for the pleasure of the personality of Godhead. So in this case, Jai and Vijay, by the Lord's arrangement, are going to the mature world so he can have some combat with his devotees to take the position of those who aren't devotees, demons. But, according to Rupa and Sanatan, they exist also in the spiritual world. But they're not inimical, they're not opposed to the supremacy, but it's an act of Yogamaya. Yogamaya is very, pretty much covers everything that we can't understand. That's Yogamaya. It's puzzling. It's not something we're used to hearing. We're used to hearing very simply, in the spiritual world, there's no demons. There's no contact with material energy. There's no modes of nature. There's no karma. It's a nice place. And then those personalities that are in the heavenly, in the spiritual world, Goloka, Vrindavan, they're spiritual demigods. I mean, Vishvaksena. What's Vishvaksena? He's the commander-in-chief. Who needs a commander-in-chief in Vaikuntha? No, in charge of the Lord Narayan's armies. You don't need one. But he's there for service, for the Lord's pleasure. Anyway, back to our reading here. The cursing of Jai and Vijay was for the Lord's satisfaction. The Lord only likes to perform his pastimes along with his associates. However, he chooses a devotee to play the part of his enemy. Play the part of. So it's the Yogamaya influence, etc. So the four Kumaras circumambulate the Lord. The Lord then orders them, depart from here, but do not be afraid. I could have nullified the Brahmana's curse, but I chose not to do so. Lakshmi, now he informs them what happened. Lakshmi, I'll just say it rather than read it. One time, the Lord Narayan wanted to take rest. Lord Narayan doesn't need to take rest, but it was a pastime. So he told Jai and Vijay, you guard the door and don't let anybody in because I'm resting. So he went to take rest. Lakshmi wanted to come in. They said, sorry, you can't come in. Lord's resting. She said, I'm the goddess of fortune. I'm sorry, you can't come in. So she became angry, transcendentally angry. For part of the Lord's Leela, she became transcendentally angry. And she then, when Narayan was awake, she said to Narayan, you got to do something. Because you know what these two doorkeepers did? They prevented us from entering, prevented me from entering. So that's not good. Now, poor Narayan. They did what he asked them to do. But there's the goddess of fortune saying, punish them. So he made an arrangement. They could be punished by the four Kumaras. So they could go to the material world and act as if they were enemies of the Lord, but they're not. They, similarly, this is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary. The Jai and Vijay prayed to the Lord, in serving you intimately, we understand you have a chivalrous spirit. You like combat. But who is worthy to be combatant of you? If you so desire, we can do that service. So he made an arrangement. to fulfill their desire, to pacify the goddess of fortune, and to uphold the principle that brahmanas are not to be offended. So everyone was happy. That's what's being said here. So then comes this appearance of, this is Brahma answering the demigods of all these bad omens that everyone is seeing in all directions. It's the pregnancy of Diti. So what to do? And he said, don't worry, the Lord will appear and destroy the demons. So they took their birth. And I found a nice image that's Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. That's Hiranyakashipu on the left. And that's Hiranyaksha on the right. He's going off to take care of some service for his elder brother. And one of the services that when he goes off, is he finds that Lord Varaha is in the Garbhodak Ocean rescuing the earth. And so he challenges Lord Varaha, who is rescuing the earth. I put these two together because that green image of Hiranyaksha has the same guy over on that side, green, and this looks similar, but it's a little different. That's Lord Varaha. So Lord Varaha is lifting the earth, and down below his feet there's you-know-who, and there's the earth up top. Now let's hear some of the battle. It's really nice. Soon after the birth of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, the demoniac twins exhibit uncommon bodily features, and their steel-like frames became so tall they seemed to touch the sky. Indeed, they blocked the view in all directions. And as they walked, the earth shook with every step. Hiranyaksha received Brahma's benediction of near immortality, so he became similarly powerful and conceited. To satisfy his elder brother, that's this image over here, Hiranyaksha took his club and began to travel all over the universe with a fighting spirit. Because no one was able to kill him due to Brahma's benediction, even the demigods fearfully hid upon seeing Hiranyaksha, just as snakes hide out of fear of Garuda. When Hiranyaksha thus saw Indraloka vacant, he roared loudly, understanding that the demigods had admitted defeat without even fighting. After returning from heaven, Hiranyaksha sportingly dove deep into the ocean, and upon seeing him, all the great aquatics panicked and fled. Finally, after moving about in the ocean for many years, Hiranyaksha reached Vibhavari, Varuna's capital. Just to make fun of the Lord of Waters, Hiranyaksha fell at his feet and smilingly begged, "Give me battle, O Supreme Lord." Upon seeing Hiranyaksha's arrogance, Varuna became enraged. Still, he curbed his anger by means of intelligence and replied, "Oh, dear one, I have given up fighting because I am too old. You are so skilled in battle that I can see no one else but the most ancient Lord Vishnu will satisfy you." "Oh, chief of the Daityas, I suggest that you approach him and thus become rid of your pride by lying down dead on the battlefield surrounded by carnivorous animals." Without paying any more heed to Varuna, Hiranyaksha departed. Then, when he happened to meet the great sage Narada. Narada has so many roles to play. The demon learned the whereabouts of the Supreme Lord. After once again entering the depths of the ocean, Hiranyaksha saw the all-powerful Supreme Lord in his boar incarnation, bearing the earth upwards, while keeping her on the end of his tusks. There we go. There. Upon seeing the Lord, the demon laughingly exclaimed, "An amphibious beast! Oh, best of the demigods, dressed in the form of a boar, the earth belongs to us, the inhabitants of the lower regions, and so I cannot allow you to take it away from my presence. You rascal, today I shall enliven my kinsmen by killing you. When you fall down dead, with your skull smashed by my mace, the demigods and rishis who offer you oblations and sacrifice will also cease to be, just like a tree that can no longer live without roots." Although the Lord was certainly pained to hear such abusive language, he tolerated it so they can continue carrying the earth, which had become very frightened. As Varaha rose out of the water, Hiranyaksha chased him and roared, "Are you not ashamed of yourself for running away after being challenged by an adversary? There is nothing that is reproachable for a shameless creature like you." Varaha calmly placed the earth upon the surface of the water and then empowered her with the capacity to float. Prabhupada discusses the powers of Vishnu. At this time, Lord Brahma and the other demigods praised the Lord for his wonderful act of lifting up the earth and then showered flowers upon him. Then, to express his terrible anger, the Lord replied, "Indeed, we are creatures of the jungle and are searching for hunting dogs like you. One who is freed from the entanglement of death has no fear from the loose talk in which you are indulging, for you are bound up with the laws of death. Now give up your foolish talk and attempt to kill me. One may be very proud, but he does not deserve a seat in an assembly if he fails to fulfill his promise." So there's lots of chivalrous talk back and forth. And in one sense, it's nice to read it because it makes the Lord happy. The whole purpose. Back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Clubs banging each other and... Should I read it? Yeah. Little boys love battle scenes, but their little boys are upstairs. Brahma's praying to him, finish him. It's becoming sunset and it's subset. The auspicious time called Abhijit began at noon and has almost passed. Therefore, please dispose of your formidable enemy quickly and thus establish peace within the world. In response, the Lord heartily laughed, while at the same time he accepted Brahma's prayers with a glance that was laden with love. Then, as Hiranyaksha fearlessly stood nearby, Lord Varaha suddenly sprang at him while aiming his mace at the demon's chin. Hiranyaksha blocked the blow with his own mace, however, and as a result, the Lord's club slipped from his hand. That blazing mace looked splendid while whirling around and around as it fell, and with a great cry of alarm arose from the onlooking demigods and rishis. Still, even though he had an excellent opportunity to strike his unarmed foe, Hiranyaksha respected the etiquette for single combat by refraining from doing so. This kindled the Lord's fury even more, however, and he invoked his Sudarshan chakra. As this wonderful disc revolved in the Lord's hands, while he was at close quarters with his enemy, the demigods and rishis exclaimed, "May victory be yours, dispatch him at once. Don't play with the demon any longer." Seeing Lord Varaha before him with the Sudarshan chakra in his hand, Hiranyaksha resentfully bit his lip and began to hiss like a serpent. Then that great demon, with fearful tusks, suddenly sprang into the air while wielding his club, and while doing so he shouted, "You are slain!" As Hiranyaksha tried to strike him, Lord Varaha playfully kicked the mace from his hand and with his left foot, and then said, "Pick up your weapon, since you are so eager to conquer me." Being challenged, Hiranyaksha picked up his mace and then hurled it impetuously while roaring loudly. Without even flinching, however, Lord Varaha easily caught the mace in his hand, and so the demon felt greatly humiliated. Being reluctant to take back his weapon when the Lord offered it to him, Hiranyaksha instead picked up a flaming trident and violently hurled it. As the trident blazed brightly while soaring through the sky, Lord Varaha tore it to pieces by releasing his Sudarshan chakra. At this, the demon became more enraged, and while letting out a loud roar, he rushed at Lord Varaha impetuously. After striking the Lord on the chest with his hard fist, Hiranyaksha immediately disappeared. The Lord was not disturbed in the least by the blow, however, any more than an elephant would feel hurt by being struck with a flower garland. Thereafter, Hiranyaksha employed many conjuring tricks against the Lord, who was Yogeshwara, and all who saw the magical display thought that the dissolution of the universe was at hand. It's a build-up. I mean, battle scenes. You like battle scenes? You two boys? Yeah? Fierce winds began blowing, and the dust that was raised created darkness in all directions. Torrents of stones fell from the sky, along with showers of pus, hair, blood, stool, urine, and bones. There's a painting that shows that. I'll see if I can find that painting. Here's Lord Varaha uplifting the earth. There's Hiranyaksha down at the bottom. There's Lord Brahma over on the right, offering, finish him, finish him. There's the earth personified when Varaha's going after Hiranyaksha. So there's many different paintings. Here's the one where everything is falling from the sky by mystic arrangements. That's this painting right there. And, pairs of demons looking very strange. Mountains discharged various weapons, and naked demonesses with their hair hanging loose suddenly appeared, carrying tridents. Hosts of yakshas and rakshasas were heard uttering cruel and savage slogans as they marched on foot and rode up on horses, elephants, and chariots. By releasing his Sudarshan chakra, however, the Lord was able to dispel all of these illusions, and at that moment, a shudder of terror passed through Diti's heart. While recalling the words of her husband, blood began to flow from her breasts. When Hiranyaksha saw that his magical creations had been dispelled, He once again made himself visible. In a fit of rage, he tried to crush the Lord with his arms as a last resort. But, to his great surprise, after trying to grab the Lord, the demon found that he was still outside the circle of his arms. Then, as Hiranyaksha angrily struck him with his fists, the Lord Varaha slapped him indifferently at the root of his ear, making him stagger backwards with his eyeballs bulging out of their sockets, his hair scattered, and his limbs broken. The great demon fell down dead like an uprooted tree. So that's the end of Hiranyaksha, and there's some more in the text, but here's it's a popular pastime with lots of different artists depicting. You see the weapons lying on the ground there, and very weird-looking demon amidst the flowers of the ocean. The cow and the peacock up on the Earth planet look very peaceful. Here's a Tagore family illustration of the pastime. I think we saw this one already. This is a temple carving along the side of a temple. And some of these are dated. This is a more recent one, an engraving. A Durga temple has this nice depiction of Lord Varaha and killing Hiranyaksha. In Nepal, here's a golden or at least gold-plated depiction of Lord Varaha. And we're almost done. These are two different references. One is in Canto 2, Chapter 7, the first of the list of avatars. The first demon, Hiranyaksha, appeared, and the Lord pierced him with his tusk. Another is the one we just read from Canto 3, Chapter 19. He was struck by a 4-foot, or his hoof. And then, artists take their creative license. He bonked him in the head with his club. And here's another. He chopped his head with his Sudarshan chakra, which isn't it may be from some other scripture, that these depictions, may be Padma Purana or some other place. But just going by what the Bhagavatam says. These are what the Bhagavatam says. And these are, this is the Supreme Lord, Varaha, who is enjoying the pastime that was created by him. The whole sequence of events was his potency causing everything to happen the way that it happened in Vaikuntha realm, so he could have this chivalrous experience of dealing with Hiranyaksha and then Hiranyakashipu. Because everything is within the personality of Godhead. We'll say it negatively. There isn't something that exists that's not within the personality of Godhead in its purified and perfect stage. That's negative. Positive, everything is within. The source of everything has everything in an uncontaminated state. So he can deal with contamination and not be contaminated. Like the sun can come in contact with some impure pool of water and evaporate the water. The sun doesn't become contaminated. So the personality of Godhead, Hari, in this case Lord Varaha, whose appearance day we're honoring tomorrow, one of his appearances, one of the two primary appearances, was this dealing with Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, the sons of Diti. And I never heard this before. It comes up several times in Rupa Goswami's writings. There's probably some description somewhere that I'm not familiar with. But the half man, half Varaha form of Lord Varaha. That must be very interesting. But there's references that our acharyas make, and it doesn't give the. Like there was one that came. We're reading Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and Sanatana Goswami really gets into it. And Sanatana Goswami wrote Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and Sanatana Goswami wrote the commentary for Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And the commentary is as far out as the book, because there's a place where Narada Muni is describing the forms of the Lord are to accommodate the desire of the devotee, or those who, how one regards the Supreme Lord, he appears accordingly. And there's some reference to one of the forms of Lord Nrsingadev is as a cat. I never heard that before. So I wrote to Keshava Bharati Maharaj, because he was the editor for Gopi's writing of Brihad Bhagavatamrita, and I had did this ever get discussed amongst you? And his reply was, there was no reference, no conversation, no reference that I'm aware of. And then he made this personal comment that's saying there's so much value in instructions of Brihad Bhagavatamrita, don't get distracted by the cat detail, like, trace that one, or the Varaha detail. It's just know the Lord is unlimited, and he can assume various forms. He's not limited. It has to be like this because it has to be like this. No. Doesn't have to be anything. There are themes in these incarnations that recur, and then there's variety within those themes, because he's enjoying, and he can enjoy differently at different times, and that's perfectly okay. He's the supreme enjoyer that has unlimited. He who is unlimited is unlimited. Unlimited manifestations of himself. Even because I didn't, before this afternoon, I should say, I didn't know about half man, Rik Varaha. I didn't know. Now I know. So now you know. And I knew that there was two Varahas during different Manus, but I didn't know the detail. Now I know the detail. Now you know the detail. So it's just the value is not just information gathering. The value is recognizing the Lord is unlimited. He has his scheduled incarnations, using Prabhupada's phrase. And within those scheduled incarnations, there's variety. And it's for his enjoyment. That's the comment that Rupa Goswami makes. In Laghu Bhagavatamrita, where he has a specific verse, and then it's Jiva Goswami, or I think it's Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentary, that says all these varieties are there, including demigods and demons in Krishna Loka. It's just for the pleasure of the Lord. And is there some limit to the pleasure of the Lord? Is there something that's in this world that doesn't exist in the spiritual realm? But what exists in the spiritual realm is without contamination. So it's new. I mean, it's kind of like whiplash. You know what whiplash is? You get in a car accident. It's jolting. But it's not material. And everything here is contaminated. And everything there is not contaminated. So what's it like? Get ready. It's very, very curiouser and curiouser and curiouser. It's better than Alice in Wonderland. You know that phrase from Alice in Wonderland?
Which one?
Curiouser and curiouser. You know the story? Alice in Wonderland? She goes down to a rabbit hole, and she, she sees all these things. It's one of her lines. Curiouser and curiouser. But it's just fiction. It's a fiction. My understanding of it's a parody. It's British humor poking fun at personalities in Great Britain at the time. And the different personalities who Alice encounters in Wonderland are fictional caricatures of personalities in Great Britain at the time. The Mad Hatter and this and that and everything. Curiouser and curiouser. It's just fiction. But this isn't fiction. And it's definitely transcendentally curiouser and curiouser. The more you go, the more it's like, wow. But it's not fiction. It's, we're getting the opportunity to have the spiritual world revealed to us. And we're not really eligible, but it's being revealed to us anyways. And if we're not curious, then we're not human. And if you're human, make sure you connect with a perfect source of knowledge, because otherwise you're going to get, head for the ditch. I remember very clearly, I'll end with this. Once upon a time, I was a young boy. And I remember as a young boy hearing about heaven. And I asked Mom and Dad, what's it like there? What do people do? How do they spend their time? And they just smiled and patted me on the head. Oh, isn't that cute? And then when people would come to visit, guests would come, they'd have me stand up, say, go ahead, say it. Isn't it cute? It was so embarrassing. I went to the priest. The priest didn't know. What's it like there? Angels and, what's it like there? What do people do? So I stopped, externally I stopped asking. But internally I didn't stop asking. And I didn't even have an understanding of the distinction between heaven, Swarga, and Vaikuntha, heaven and the kingdom of God. But read Srimad Bhagavatam, and there's very, very clear description of what's there in heaven and what's in the kingdom of God. That, when the 4 Kumaras come to the gates of Vaikuntha, that's a whole chapter description of the kingdom of God. Wow. And then keep going. Forms of the Lord and keep going. The Haridham and Golokadham and details within Golokadham and keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going. Compliments of our great acharyas. And Prabhupada has given it to us as well in, very simple form. We're so fortunate. What do we do to have access to this pristine description of reality, spiritual reality? We just happen to be fallen and standing in the right place, and somebody came along and said, hey, check this out. I think you'll like it. Okay. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. It's Varaha's appearance day tomorrow. Let's see if there's some discussion on this topic in general. It's almost 8 o'clock.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for nice description. I have few questions as a kind of little discussion on the four Kumara part first. So the four Kumaras, there is a reference of pastime of Lakshmi Devi that she was also trying to enter,
Yes.
and they stopped her previously.
Yes.
This question was asked once in one of the Bhagavatam class earlier. So
Okay.
somebody was asking, where is the reference of this story? So he was kind of denying this pastime, that from where does this story come?
Well, I know that, here's what I know. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments on it in his commentary. Now, okay, where did Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur get the reference? Which is a, legitimate question. And my answer is A or B. He didn't, in the commentary that I'm familiar with, he doesn't say it's in Matsya Purana or Kurma Purana or Vishnu Dharmotama Purana. And it doesn't say where it comes from. But he's not a fiction writer. And I don't know what the reference is. I know that Vishwanath, and I trust Vishwanath. And B, in some cases, our acharyas have transcendental realization of situations in the spiritual realm that they just have access to because of their spiritual acumen. Now, in spiritual, I find that our great acharyas, they commonly make reference to where their statements are coming from, but some don't always. Commonly they do, but not always. So where that reference is from is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary, and for many of us that's sufficient. But somebody says, well, what was the reference that he's drawing from? If it's not, it's just like, just like Madhvacharya. Jiva Goswami trusts, he writes in Tattva Sandarbha. Tattva Sandarbha is a book that's describing the pramana, the means of evidence for knowing something. Pramana, Shabda Pramana. So Jiva Goswami writes, when in this book, Tattva, in the Sandarbhas, these are my key sources of reference. In most cases, I've actually physically seen these texts. In some cases, I have not. And those cases that I have not, a common source is Madhvacharya, because Madhvacharya had a vast library that he had gathered over his lifetime, and he refers to this and that and the other scriptural reference that I have not physically seen with my eyes. But I trust Madhvacharya, and therefore I quote Madhvacharya, even I may not have physically inspected the text. So like that, when Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes something, our trust goes to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that he's not just on a creative writing spree. It's faith in Vishwanath as an acharya, as a writer. Just like this, take this little example. Sanatana Goswami writing, sometimes, we don't know how many times, the Lord Nrsimhadev appears as a cat. Now where's that from? I don't know. But Sanatana Goswami is not going to go on a creative writing spree. I have that faith. So on the faith, I can say, I don't know what the scriptural reference is. So that's a second option in answer to this person. Next.
So, the other question was the four Kumaras, when they cursed the two doorkeepers, Jay and Vijay. So of course they were also at some fault. And when Lord Vishnu came there, they were repenting that please,
Yes.
you can punish us
Yes.
and punish these innocent people,
Yes.
whatever way you like.
Yes.
So was there any consequences the four Kumaras have to face?
They were being inspired by the Lord from within their heart, so no. Now that doesn't entitle the rest of us.
This happens sometimes. So
Yes,
somebody
it
may
happens
say,
sometimes.
I got the inspiration, I can say bad word to other person. So,
Yeah,
this is-
so-
I take it for granted.
Mischief knows no limit. Next.
I will give chance to somebody else.
Okay, behind you.
Is there a Varaha Purana also?
Yes,
some-
there is a Varaha Purana.
So is that possible that some of the conflicts are coming from Puranas?
Yes, it's possible. I'm not knowledgeable at all
No, one of
in
the questions
Varaha Purana.
Hinduism has, and I think what I'm saying I heard from someplace else, is that when there is a conflict between different Puranas and all that, you take the Vedas and the Brahma Sutras and Gita are the dominant thing. And the Puranas are just made to tell the stories and get the children understand and all that. So authoritatively, Bhagavad Gita and Vedas take a
More
preference.
prominent position.
Right. And the conflicts happen because different people in old days, this was not all computer age, different people, different acharyas say something to different audiences. So there is and the different people interpreting it, so that there are some conflicts, but when there are conflicts, most of the acharyas and all the different people say that these are the three things you have to follow. If there is a conflict, then follow Gita and Krishna's word rather than other people's word. That's the way I understand it, Hare Krishna.
Okay. Well, Jiva Goswami doesn't understand it that way. And I could give you a detailed explanation, but I don't want to rock your boat. I recommend you've heard something since you've been growing up in a certain way, which you just described, and I've heard it too. I invite you to read the section of Tattva Sandarbha, Pramana means evidence, Pramana Kanda, where he gives a different picture. It's not totally different picture, but it is a dramatically different picture as far as relegating the Puranas to a secondary position compared to the four Vedas and Vedanta Sutra and Bhagavad Gita. It's a significantly different picture. And the reason why is also there. Tattva Sandarbha, Pramana Kanda. It's not big. It's short. And if you can't find a copy, let him know and he'll help you get that section. You can go through the section. You can say, I don't like it. And you can say, that's interesting. Okay. The short of it is, Jiva Goswami establishes that the Puranas are as Vedic as the four Vedas. And he confirms that statement by the four Vedas, who say the Puranas are as Vedic as we are, or it is the fifth Veda. From the one Veda, when Vyasadeva divided into four, part of that division into the four, there was the remaining verses which became the Puranas. They're as Vedic as the one original Veda. It's in the four Vedas that it says that, and not just once, several places. Now, there is another explanation of why there's conflict amongst the Puranas, and it has to do with the modes of nature, and the purpose of the Puranas is to elevate people who are in the modes of nature. And so when you're elevating somebody that's in this mode, it may not be the same procedure as elevating somebody in that mode, and therefore, as there's a hierarchy amongst the modes, there's a hierarchy amongst the Puranas. The Sattvic Puranas are more reliable, but the other Puranas have things that are inspiring people in those other modes, and there's the essence within those Puranas. So you need a discerning person to work through that.
I have heard this same thing, explanation some other places also.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, you'll find it very elegantly and eloquently expressed, and succinctly expressed by Jiva Goswami. I think you'll like his writing. Someone else? How are we doing? Yes. There, you're on. You sound you.
So in different Lord Avataras, so for example, this Avatara, like for Lord pleasure, so his devotees came as asuras. So, but in between there are other people like demigods, like they are also involved in that. So,
Yes, they are.
But they are getting is a pain, right? So, but Lord sees very kindful, but how the other characters, the example demigods, they will be in trouble most of the time for every avatars, right? So due to the demon. So these activities happen, but Lord pressure, but other around characters are also involved. They are getting into the difficulty situation. So is that? But Lord is kindful, very kindful, right? How do we take that?
Are you asking, how is it, if the Lord is very kind,
Yes.
why is it that the demigods are put in trouble?
Yes.
That's your question?
Yes. Yes.
Well, they're getting purified because demigods aren't pure. Demigods are devotees, but they're mixed devotees. And so difficulty comes when you're mixed. When you contact contamination, you contact some infection, you get infected. Just like when we're wearing masks. When you contact infection, you get infected. So they've contacted the modes, and so they're infected, and so they suffer because of that infection. But they're being purified. Because of their devotion, they're being protected by and seeing and feeling the kindness of the Supreme Lord. They turn to him when they got their difficulty. And he smiles. Because he sanctioned the difficulty, and he's also extending his protection, even when there's difficulty. Pritranaya sadhunam, right? So, with the protection, the pritranaya, there's some difficulty, but the protection is there. Yeah? Anything else, or we're finished up for tonight? Okay. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki Jai.